Good evening. My name is Joyce Matters, and I want to welcome you to Women's Week. I'm glad to see so many of you. I have the special honor tonight to introduce to you one of the most challenging and enlightened thinker-writer on the earth. I don't know about the other planets or all the other galaxies, but I'm sure that she's far beyond them also. Her name is Mary Daly. She has written books that I've loved, read first, then loved, and underlined in profusely. They are The Church and the Second Sex, Beyond God the Father, Gynecology, Pure Lust, and her new one, Webster's First New Intergalactic Wikidictionary of the English Language. So that'll help those beings in the other galaxies. Her credentials are truly Amazonian. She earned her BA degree from the College of St. Rose in Albany, New York, her MA from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and her PhD in religion from the School of Theology, St. Mary's College, Notre Dame. She also holds a Doctor of Theology and a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Freiburg in Switzerland. Mary Daly is a radical feminist philosopher and associate professor of theology at Boston College, where she teaches a course in feminist ethics. Mary is all of this, but she is much, much more. She has released the true spirit of old words that have hurt us in the past and have empowered them with healing strength. She has created new words for us, ones that shine and glitter with pure energy, ones that feel good on our tongues and in our hearts. We gather together tonight, crones, hags, harpies, spinsters, furies, otherworld journeyers, boundary dwellers, amazing Amazons, and wild women, all blending our passions for living and loving. We are the keepers of culture, a culture that has always been with us from the beginning, for it is a part of us. It is a culture based on interconnectedness, in life-enhancing principles, community and support, one of circles and webs. We also are the agents of change, for our lives and our deep feelings fuel our visions and our active participation in change. We know deep in our hearts, indeed deep within ourselves, what earth living could be like. Because of this, we speak, write, dance, sing, act, paint, think, dream, share, and live lives so that it will be so. Tonight, Mary Daly will share her wisdom and light in her dance of words, be thinking, be speaking, be spelling, recalling the archimagical power of women. Please welcome weaver of words, dancer of passion, wild crone of our universe, Mary Daly.
Can you hear me? Because, you know, with these little phallic things, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Okay. Whenever I do this kind of speaking, I see it as an invitation to you and to myself to an other world journey. And you know that the other world journey, written with a capital O, is to the homeland of wild women, because as wild women, we are very other, very strange. And this is a journey of exorcism and ecstasy. I would like also to do what I commonly do now, an invocation or a conjuring of the four sisters, past, present, and future. So, for example, Sojourner Truth, Matilda Jocelyn Gage, Hildegard of Bingen, Sappho, Susan B. Anthony, Virginia Woolf, Bridget, and our past, present, and future selves. And I would like to conjure also our sisters, the earth, the air, the fire, the water, who are being raped by the phallocrats, penocrats, patriarchs, just as women are, maimed, mutilated, and who, like us, can rise up. I think there is going on right now a battle of principalities and powers. And the basic battle that I see is between those who choose decay, dying, hatred of life, the necrophiliacs, and those, Kissinger, Reagan, his nothingness, who was here, came over and went in his Pope Mobile or wherever he rides. and those who choose with every step of our being, with every movement, life, who attempt to choose life, those who choose biophilia, love of life. To choose love of life under these conditions means opening a third eye and opening an inner ear, which doesn't mean we become such space cadets that we don't see the foreground. That these ears are open, these eyes are open, and other senses come alive. So that a basic distinction that's the groundwork to anything that I have to say is between the foreground, which is the flat land, the plastic, the mediated experience, the manufacturers of mediated experience. The foreground is the unreal, that is in a deep sense, it is not organic. So the distinction is between that and the background, which is the wild reality of ourselves and of all biophilic beings, the animals, the plants, the trees, the sun, the moon. There's a tremendous moon out tonight. There's the stars. Okay, now in that foreground, they're manufacturing chemical contamination, mental deprivation, all contamination also of all kinds. Because, it's a Sado society ruled by snools. The Sado society is, I'll give you an example of a champion of the Sado society, like St. Jerome, who beat himself, starved himself, deprived himself of sleep, and then at night in his fantasies he was visited by bevies of dancing girls. Jerome was a typical saint. And that's just one old Christian example, but they're everywhere. Those who hate life and who inflict their asceticism upon the rest of us. A-S-C-E-T-I-C-I-S, asceticism on the rest of us, so that they inflict lies, mental deprivation, spiritual deprivation, physical and sensory deprivations of all kinds. And in that foreground, there is something called the Doomsday Clock in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, which has been around since the late 40s. There is a logo, and as many of you probably know, that logo is the Doomsday Clock. And back in the 50s, they set the hands at something like 12 minutes to midnight, and it was 7 minutes to midnight, and went back and forth variously. In 1984, they themselves set the hands at 3 minutes to midnight. Midnight, of course, representing the time of disaster, of nuclear holocaust. They are the doomsday men with their doomsday clocks. The world that have is clockocracy. It chops up our lifetimes into tiny tidbits. And if they don't succeed in having a vast nuclear explosion, vast, they're having them anyway, there is nevertheless the steady stream of junk that they pour out, the hateful, killer radiation and contamination. That doomsday clock, then, is ticking. And I want that, but it's in the foreground. And so, the hope, I think, has to do with our journeying into the reality of ourselves so that we can make the choices that will really matter. As Virginia Woolf said, as a woman, I have no country. As a woman, I want no country. As a woman, my country is the whole world. But that whole world on the foreground level is groaning under phallic rule. It's only when there's the opening of these other senses that it is possible, I think, to be counterclockwise. And more about that later. Why is it that women seem so stuck, so dulled out, so not moving? It is so discouraging, right, sometimes. Unless you look in certain other directions, and then you can be encouraged because, the as things get worse and worse in the foreground, they seem to get better and better in the background. Well, I would suggest, though, that there are certain blocks, and I have mentioned these in Pure Lust and previous talks, just to run through them. There are the pseudo-passions embedded in women all the time through their media, their education, and so forth. Like, bitterness, anxiety, depression, hostility. These are blogs in inner space. They're not real passions. They roll around and roll around inside. One wallows and wallows in them and does not act in the world because they have no nameable objects or agents. You just deal and deal. And therapy promotes this, the therapeutic syndrome. How do I deal with how you feel, with how I deal with how you feel? And there's a vocabulary, that is so truncated. Is when you come into a therapeutic environment, I'm not saying it isn't any good for anybody at any time, but I don't need to do that caveat. The jargon is so deadly. I have issues about that. Right. I'm feeling invalidated by you right now. You can't ever have a good conversation about ideas or do something, like writing is therapeutic, talking is therapeutic, walking is therapeutic. Can't writing be writing and walking be walking and talking be talking? I know where she's coming from. To give a passionate feminist lecture, no, you don't know where I'm coming from. You wouldn't say that, obviously. Well, I just needed to share that with you. And some other boxes that I named in Pure Lust. I'm going to sort of run through Pure Lust in this 117-hour lecture and then move on to the wicked area. But if you think of the word belonging, embedded into women in this society, in patriarchy worldwide, is the need to belong. The contrived need to belong to a man, to belong to a sorority, to belong to a church, to belong to a certain social set, to belong. And it's deadening. You have to conform. But if I take that word, and I cut it, and it becomes belonging, then with my mind I break out of that box. Belonging is the longing to be. It is the lust for happiness. And another box that they keep women in through this conditioning is befriending, the need to be befriended, the need to be dead-ended, the protection racket. The need to be befriended. But if I break that word, it becomes befriending, and that is the lust to share happiness, to share being. And then there's bewitchingness, the need to be bewitching. Feminism, or not feminism, I'm still on the plane. Okay, feminization 101, charm. Charm used to mean the power of a witch to cast a spell. And now, what is it? Charm schools, charm. It's lost its medieval meanings. But if you take away that embedded need to be bewitching, and I make it bewitching, that is the lust for metamorphosis. And when I jump on my broom and ride it, I'm being bewitching. So those blocks and the plastic passions, the pseudo passions, keep women in those boxes. And it's deadly. And so in order to move into real passion, I think it's necessary to recognize them for what they are and melt them down. For example, bitterness. Oh, she's so bitter. It must be that Catholic background. Or another one, fulfillment. Oh, I have to go to therapy so I can be a fulfilled woman. I don't want to be a fulfilled woman. Where do I go when I'm fulfilled? So, breaking out of all that, then, I would suggest some new virtues, like the courage to be, the courage to see through all that, the courage to leave their institutions, especially their religions, and their deadly professions such as medicine. The courage to live, the courage to sin. Sin has the same etymological root as the verb to be in Indo-European. Sin is from the same root as the verb to be, and that's a clue. For women, to sin is to be, and to be is to sin. It's the sin, the original sin of women, is being. I'd call also for the virtue of rage. Rage is not a stage. Rage is what springs me onto my broom, my nightmare. suggest also that we need the virtue of disgust. They are so disgusting. We could never be disgusted enough at the phallocrats. It's all hanging out there now so obviously. I mean, there's not only Bork, Gork, Schmork, he's just one, creature, shadow creature, but he's almost a distraction from seeing all the rest of them. Or it's for his nothingness. The only appropriate response that I could see is either ignoring him, but if you can't do that, I know he's gone now, but he'll be back. The kind of protesting that would involve just women lining the streets with laugh boxes. It just seems laughing out loud. The virtue of laughing out loud is also recommended by me. Moving on, I would like to say very clearly what my position is. My position is that of a radical feminist. Radical feminist. Also, there used to be buttons that said Fesbian Leninist, which indicated one implies the other, logically. Radical feminism, what does it mean? I think if a woman says, I am a radical feminist, I have certain criteria for assessing that statement. I can assess it when I make it, and I would suggest it to others to see if you're ever going to, if there are hags, crones, harpies, furies, spinsters, nags, prudes. Here are the criteria that I would suggest. First, if a woman makes a statement, I am a radical feminist, I would suggest that there's veracity, there's truth in that. First, if she has a radical and awesome sense of otherness from identity as a patriarchal woman. I mean with a capital O, it is an ecstatic sense of being other from all that. I am not that. Nothing in me wants to be that. With my whole being, I am other from that. And the second criterion for truth, if I make the statement, I am a radical feminist, is that I have an accurate knowledge, a deep knowledge of the sanctions that will come down, that do come down from the patriarchy, the punishments for it. But you see, I have figured quite a long time ago that, and continue to know, that I'll be punished just as much for being an itty-bitty feminist as for going the whole way. So, you might as well go the whole way. The third criterion that I would suggest to you for assessing whether you want to take on that name, not just label, but name, to name your life with it, is that radical feminism involves moral outrage on behalf of women as women, not simply as members of other ethnic groups, other social classes, any kind of regional or age groups. All of those are very important, but to be a radical feminist, I experience moral outrage on behalf of women as women, whether I'm thinking about the foot-maimed women of China, the clitoridectomized women of Africa, the somewhere between 200,000 and 9 million women burned as witches in Europe during the so-called Renaissance, the countless women now killed in serial murders in the United States and across Europe, those who are battered, maimed, raped, incestuously abused. Okay, I feel moral outrage on behalf of women as women. And that's because I am a woman, that is my identity. And if I were the last radical feminist, therefore that's who I would be. A radical feminist, because I am a woman. All right, and the fourth of the criteria is constancy or persistence. And that means that when it's not cool to be called a feminist anymore, the whole media whiteout now of feminism is passé. We have made all these gains. There are a few issues still, but everything is so much better now. Right? So that stupefied, dulled out, is the name of the game. That anyone under 25 is supposed to be beyond all that, And actually, there's an ignorance abysmal beyond all naming. Not only of the atrocities, but of the facts of women's history, of our deep, background of our deep, ancient society. It's all blotted out in these pseudo-institutions, in these pseudo-educational, institutions where they reverse and reverse and reverse. I mean all of them, whether it's Podunk Community College or Harvard, which has prestige. Prestige, by the way, means trick, if you look at it. But it's the same. And what is done in these institutions is research, and I mean research. So that the full professor researches what was researched before and covered up, recovered, and then the assistant professor, the associate, the associate means you associate with asses. That's the rank. All right, and the instructors and the graduate students each researches what has been recovered by those preceding. Right? And this is what I suggest to be the kitty litter box syndrome of patriarchal scholarships. All right, so moving on. We're just lurching out of pure lust now because we've gone through about 9 hours of the 117 hours, during which I will read to you page by page everything that I have written. Many years ago, Robin Morgan, the feminist poet, wrote of the women's revolution, "I want a women's revolution like a lover. I lust for it. I want so much this freedom, this end, struggle and fear and lies we all exhale, that I could die just with the passionate uttering of that desire." And in Pure Lust, in 1984, I talked about the double-edged, laborious quality of the expression pure lust. Because, see, laborious, is the double axe of the Amazon. Swings that from side to side, whirls it and twirls it. And so words are like labrises. Our minds are like labrises. Women are labrises. All right? And that's why, too, women and words go together. Our labrys-like qualities are the same. The race of wild women and the race of wild words go together. All right. So pure lust is double-sided. On the one hand, lust, if you look it up in the dictionary, means sexual desire, especially of a violent, self-indulgent character, lechery, lasciviousness. So phallic lust levels all life. Violent it is. And it dismembers spirit matter, attempting annihilation. It's refined cultural products, from the sadistic pornography of the Marquis de Sade to the sadomasochistic theology of the Karl Barth, are essentially the same. This lust is pure in the sense that it is characterized by unmitigated malevolence. Right now, the word lust has utterly other meanings than this. I write that with a capital L. It means vigor, fertility. It means an intense longing, craving. Even according to the dictionary, it means this. It means eagerness, enthusiasm. So wise women can wield this word, and as our wand, our labrys, for it names not only the thrust of the argument that assails women and nature on all levels, mythic, ideological, institutional, behavioral, but also the way out, the vigor, eagerness, and intense longing that launches wild women on journeys beyond the state of lechery. So primarily, then, lust, and especially pure lust, names the high humor, hope, and cosmic accord of those women who choose to escape, to follow our heart's deepest desire and bound out of the state of bondage, wanderlusting and wonderlusting with animals and plants, moving in planetary communion with the farthest stars. This lust is in its essence astral. It is pure passion, unadulterated, absolute, simple, sheer striving for abundance of being. And when a woman is moved by this lust, she lurches, leaps into starlight, her tears become tidal, her cackles cosmic, her laughter lusty. Now, the wikidary then is an expression of this lust. And because when women come alive and our auras expand, words come alive, it becomes necessary to have something better than the dictionary. And hence, there is now Webster's first new intergalactic wikidary of the English language, conjured by Mary Daly in cahoots with Jane Computing. A wikidary is a dictionary for wicked women, for wicked women. And sort of lurching into it now, I would like to talk about mystery, because what it really does, what the Wikidictionary does, is free words. What it attempts to do, and I think succeeds to some extent in doing, is free words from the cages and prisons of patriarchal patterns. Words have been beaten down, banalized, reduced to serving the sentences of Father Time. They are made into ladies-in-waiting, wasted and worn in the service of thought-stopping grammar. Right? The Wikidictionary is a declaration that words and women have served the Father's sentences long enough. Webster's ride the rhythms of tidal time, freeing words like birds uncaged. These soundings rush and soar. You see, think of the rhythm of speech. Okay, on a Sunday, you might be in the car and you might flip on the radio. Sunday morning, this has happened to me. And instantly I know what it is and I want to, shut it off, a sermon, okay? And how do I know this even before I hear articulately 2 or 3 words? And the Lord says that the God is blah, 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 blah. And the Lord is blah, 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 blah. There's like strictly flat, EEG, like, it's not animal, vegetable, or mineral, But when women really communicate with each other, when we spark and spin, it's a very different biorhythm that happens. There's a rhythm to words that come alive. And words begin to speak themselves and sound themselves. Now that other junk, the Sunday sermon, etc., I suggest it's all manifestation of what I would call the mystery of man. Now, for centuries they have written about women's mysteries. Women are mysterious. I am not mysterious. There's nothing mysterious about me. You begin to get suspicious of the word mystery when you look at its etymology, which is, it's from the Greek word maien, to initiate into religious rites, use of the eyes and lips. It means to close the eyes and lips, That's not the way. I want to open my eyes. I want to speak, speak, which is to speak into being. And that's, effective be thinking into being. And it issues into be spelling, the casting of spells. So I looked more into mystery and found that every definition is unappetizing. For example, we read in Webster's dictionary that it is a religious truth revealed by God that man cannot know by reason alone, and that once it has been revealed, cannot be completely understood. Of course. Wicked women notice that their mysteries cannot be understood because they make no sense. Their academic speech makes no sense. Their military science makes no sense. Their ologies make no sense. Their politics make no sense. Their laws make no sense. Their medicine makes no sense. It's all fettered by reversals. Their medicine kills, not cures. No. Okay, the religion binds the mind, doesn't free. And a little bit more about reversals when we reach the 99th hour of this talk. But in thinking about possible dissertations, if there were a feminist university diversity, someone unraveling the mysteries of man might want to write, for example, on a topic such as the failure of man, or flopocracy, the history of man's disasters, or the hysterical man, a critical study in male psychology, or the eternal misery of man. Right. So unveiling the mysteries of man is unveiling patriarchal culture, which isn't hard when you catch on to their device of reversal. I'd like to tell you a little bit about reversal. And I was doing an analysis of the flat, banal, nukspeak, the production of gibberish that is patriarchal verbal creativity. Okay, first about the device of reversal. Well, you know that George Orwell discovered doublethink. And you know that in 1984, the doublethink involves holding two thoughts simultaneously, which contradict each other, but forgetting about the contradiction. and having a conscious belief in both of these. All right. Now, I think doublethink is the internal process. Reversals are like externalizations of doublethink. So let me give you some examples. One form of reversal is simple inversion, which means everything is turned inside out and upside down. These are so all-pervasive that we don't notice them, because when everything is bizarre, nothing seems bizarre. Ronald Reagan is called the great communicator. And the people love him. The MX missile has been called the peacekeeper. Animal rights activists who oppose violence against any creature are labeled terrorists. And it goes on and on. It's so that, all right, makeup is called the natural look, and a woman who doesn't wear it is called unnatural. And it's everywhere. It's all pervasive. Reversal. No, and the ones who hate living and really hate life are called pro-life. And the news is really the olds. It's very old. It's nothing new. You could read a 1950s newspaper and be just as excited as you were by today's. Okay, or think even how it permeates the language. Okay, well, let me give you another type of reversal before I go on. This one's a little more complex. There's several kinds, but this one I think is kind of interesting and useful to diagnose. This is what I call reversal by redundancy and contradiction. And I discovered this one night thinking about how they think. All right. I'll give you examples, but the idea here, if I had a blackboard I'd draw it, but is that they invent great big bloated categories and slip in two opposing subcategories. Okay, here's an example. There was a young physicist from Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, was interviewed in the New York Times, for the New York Times, Lawrence C. West, and he was asked how he felt about making weapons of death. And he said, I don't think I fall into that category of working on weapons of death. We're working on weapons of life. Ones that will save people from weapons of death. Duh. All right. What's going on irrationally, illogically, is now there's implied here a category of weapons, big category, weapons, two subspecies. Weapons of death, weapons of life. Okay. In all the Catholic ethics, there was always the just war theory. Just war. So, it just so happens that it was always very useful for any bishops or whatever, because their side was always fighting a just war. War, subcategories, just and unjust. No, as if any war were just. Or another example of this creation of a bloated category. Think of the expression forcible rape. Right. The implication there in this redundant expression is that the category rape contains two opposing subcategories, forcible and in fact there are psychologists who have written about what they call benign rape, which occurs when a woman has orgasm watching pornographic movies, blah, blah, they make this contrived thing. The transsexual empire created by John Money, etc., the manufacturer of transsexuals, involved the multiplication of jargon. And they refer to us as native women. So I'm a native woman. Women, native and non-native. Okay. If you can buy that, then anything goes. Everything is okay. Right. Organ, just what happens when you go to the health food store. I mean, I go and I say, I want to get some organic vegetables. But, if these are organic, then what is this other stuff? Right? Okay, so that's a reversal. And there's a manufactured proliferation of these phony terms, shallow terms. For example, mummies, dummies, and antibiotics. Okay, the dummies, for example, are man-made terms. I won't call them words. They're terms because they terminate thought. That are derived from words naming elemental reality. For example, plant, to name a nuclear power plant, is obviously derived from the word naming vegetative life, plant, okay? Or bug, to name an electronic listening device. And then you have the plethora of terms, for products, Tide, Joy, etc. All of these are, dummy terms, that is, replicants of words originally naming elemental reality. Mustang, Jaguar, etc. Okay, so I won't go into all the categories of these these terms, these pseudo words, but it's just illustrating patriarchal creativity. All right. The Wikidictionary resembles superficially, and moving into the Wikidictionary, an ordinary dictionary, in that it too has front matter. As they have an essay on spelling. The Wikidictionary has an essay on spelling, which is about the casting of spells. And they have, essays on pronunciation. Well, we have an essay on a web on pronouncing, announcing, denouncing, etc. You see, because wicked words are pronounced differently. Ecology does not sound like gynecology. Gynecology is just gynecology. Ecology says something else. Words are not just blobs on paper. When you create words and you mean them, they are sounds. They are audible. And that's why the Wikidictionary and certain other books should be read out loud. Right, a few words from the Wikidictionary. The core contains three categories of words. The first type are like key words and philosophical words. Some examples. Anamnesia. Unforgetting the elemental connections of women. Overcoming the normal condition of amnesia inflicted upon women in patriarchy. The state of oblivion. Archetypal dead time, AD. The year of the Lord, any year of any Lord, AD. The perpetual bedtime of the comatose sleeping beauties and Prince Charmings who are fused into their roles in the frozen state of fatherland. Timeless time, lacking genuine movement, having no real past, present, or future. Bedazzling, eclipsing the foreground world by the brilliance of being. Be laughing, expression of elemental humor, carrying lusty laughers into the background. Ontological laughing, being silly together. Silly is from an Old English word meaning happy. Silly means happy. Courage, outrageous. The courage to be an other. The courage of revolting hags who reverse the reigning reversals, becoming ever more offensive, more tasteless. Courage to sin. The courage to commit original acts of participation in being. The courage to be elemental through and beyond the horrors of the obscene society. The courage to be intellectual in the most direct and daring way, claiming and trusting the deep correspondence between the structures, processes of one's own mind and the structures, processes of reality. The courage to trust and act on one's own deepest intuitions. Courage to see. The courage to become disillusioned, to see through male mysteries, to become a seer, envisioning an archaic future. Well, a couple of more from that part. Fury, righteous female rage. Focused, gynergetic will to break through the obstacles that block the flow of female force. Volcanic dragon fire, elemental breathing of those who love the earth and her kind, who rage against the erasure of our kind. I think I might move ahead. Well, there's one other maybe from here. There are hundreds. So. Real eyes. The authentic, R-E-A-L-E-Y-E-S, the authentic elemental wild capacity to realize. Touchable caste, fixed status imposed upon women and all of nature, condition of those condemned by phallocrats to be touched, physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, by those in possession of a penis. Condition of those systematically subjected to phallic violation, e.g. by rape, battering, medical experimentation, and butchery. Okay, I think the only one I'd like to, another one that I would take from that section is wild. Wild is in gynecology. Wild it's done so well in Webster's dictionary that I didn't even have to change it, but just copy it. And therefore it was given Webster's seal of approval. Webster's intergalactic seal of approval is the frontispiece of the Wikidary. It is a beautiful seal who flaps her approval of her flippers. Wild. This is good for my adrenaline, anyway. According to Noah Webster's dictionary, living in a state of nature, not tamed or domesticated, growing or produced without the aid and care of man. Native, not living near or associated with man, not amenable to control, restraint, or domestication, unruly, ungovernable, reckless. Wild means exceeding normal or conventional bounds in thought, design, conception, execution, or nature. Extravagant, fantastic, visionary. Rude, uncivilized, barbaric. Wild means savage, intractable, rebellious, erratic. Wild means not accounted for by any known theories. If you had some funny feelings while that was being read, I suggest you review in your minds the embedding of the plastic and potted passions, the pseudoped. Hostility, depression, how can she say that? It's a bitter. The second word web of the core has words describing the inhabitants of the background, their activities and characteristics. So I'll read a few of these. Battle axe. According to Webster's dictionary, battle axe is a slang word meaning a quarrelsome, irritable, domineering woman. According to the Wikidary, it means a raging, dreadless, unconquerable crone. Example, Carrie Nation. Batty. Adjective. Having the qualities of a bat. Self-directed, uncanny, eccentric, and active by night. Applied especially to crackpot crones and old bats. Examples, Ruth Gordon, Old Bat Davis, Calamity Jane. Canny comment from Martha Jane Cannery Hickok, 1852 to 1903. I can go on to the Sioux and Cheyenne camps where a man couldn't go without being killed. They think I'm plain batty, so I go unmolested. They all call me Calamity Jane. Broom. Hag-ridden vehicle propelled by rage, transporting dreadful, dreadless women out of the state of bondage. Catatonic. Healing exhilaration achieved through the companionship of felicitous felines. Catty. Catty, adjective. Self-reliant, independent, resilient, having the wild, witchy, and wicked characteristics of a cat. Applied especially to gossips. Example, Carrie Chapman, cat. Chair crone. Any hag who occupies a chair. Example, Dame Edith Sitwell. Chronological, being in accordance with the clarifying logic of Crohn's. Dyke. According to Webster's dictionary, dyke means a barrier preventing passage, especially protecting against or excluding something undesirable. This definition has been awarded Webster's Intergalactic Seal of Approval. Tasteless. Eye beam. E-Y-E. beam. According to Webster's dictionary, I-beam, E-Y-E-B-E-A-M, is an archaic word meaning a radiant glance of the eye. According to the Wikidictionary, it is an archaic term, name, word, meaning a radiant glance of the eye. Eye. I bite. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, I bite, E-Y-E-B-I-T-E, is an obsolete, rare term, meaning to bewitch with the eye. According to the Wikidictionary, it means to be witch with the eye. Eye. Example, according to the Reverend Montague Summers, in Ireland it was supposed that certain witches could cast a spell at a glance, and they were commonly called eye-biting witches.